They said her laughter could wake the dead. But when it echoed through the courtyard that night, it made the living tremble instead. In the center of the square stood a young woman bound to a wooden post, her head tilted back, mouth open in uncontrollable laughter. The sound rolled through the crowd like thunder, bright, broken, wrong. Her chest heaved, her throat raw, yet the laughter wouldn't stop.
Her body shook, tears streamed down her face, and still she laughed until the sound turned to gasps, then wheezes, then something that no longer sounded human.
The priest called it divine purification. The nobles called it justice. The people called it the punishment of mirth. And as she collapsed, the crowd didn't know whether to cross themselves or cover their ears, because it wasn't joy they heard, it was terror wearing a smile. They buried her at dawn, lips frozen in the shape of a grin. By decree, no one was allowed to laugh for 3 days. But the next night, the sound returned faint, echoing through the streets, a giggle that didn't belong to the living.
They said it was the devil.
They were wrong. It was her laughter refusing to die. The empire of Valemont was not built on faith, it was built on fear, dressed in the garments of devotion. Its cathedrals stretched like iron ribs across the sky. Its priests preached mercy while holding chains. And in their sermons, one commandment rang louder than the rest. A woman's laughter is the devil's echo. It began as doctrine, then became law. The High Synod declared that laughter from a woman's mouth was an unholy disturbance of divine order. They called it mockery of God, a sound that tempted men into sin and pulled angels from grace. A woman who laughed was dangerous, they said, because laughter meant thought, and thought meant rebellion. The Doctrine of Joy was passed in the spring of 1426, a parchment sealed with crimson wax and tears. It declared that women must speak only in reverence, smile only in gratitude, and never laugh unless permitted by confession. Violators were to be tried before the ecclesial court and purified through mirth. That was the phrase they used, purified through mirth. It sounded merciful. It wasn't. Within weeks, a new chamber was built beneath the Cathedral of Saint-Michel, a circular room of marble and brass lined with carvings of smiling angels. In the center stood a single wooden chair, arms bound with leather straps, a funnel-shaped mask attached to the wall by a coiled pipe. The priests called it the Chamber of Mirth. The city called it the place where joy went to die. The invention came from the court physician who claimed to have discovered the nervous reflex of hysteria. He said that laughter, when prolonged artificially, could purge sin. What he really discovered was how long a human could survive while suffocating. Victims were forced to inhale a concoction of burning herbs and crushed sweetroot, a mixture that induced euphoria, dizziness, and spasms of involuntary laughter. The more they inhaled, the harder they laughed, and as the body laughed, it forgot to breathe. The first victims were servants accused of giggling during Mass. But soon, laughter itself became suspicion. A child's laugh could damn her mother. A wedding feast could end in arrests. The sound of joy became the sound of guilt. And then came Lady Amara of Selwyn. She was the daughter of a scholar known for her wit and quick tongue. She taught young girls to read, wrote poems about freedom, and had the audacity to make others laugh. Her laughter was light, musical, contagious, so much so that even the guards assigned to monitor her smiled when they heard it. That was her mistake. One evening, during a sermon on obedience, Amara was seen covering her mouth to stifle a laugh when the Archbishop mispronounced a verse. The congregation gasped. The next morning she was arrested. Her trial was public. The Grand Inquisitor stood before her, draped in crimson robes, his voice calm as he listed her sins. You mocked the holy word. You corrupted youth with laughter. You defied silence. Amara did not beg. She only asked one question. If laughter offends God, then why did he give it to us? The courtroom went still. The inquisitor leaned forward, his lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile, to test who is strong enough to silence it. That single exchange sealed her fate. For 3 days, the bells of St. Mirel tolled in warning. Pilgrims arrived from distant provinces to witness her purification. The square filled with thousands, peasants, priests, nobles, all waiting to see what laughter looked like when stripped of its innocence. The night before her execution, a priest was sent to record her confession. He wrote later, "She did not cry, she did not pray. When I asked if she feared death, she said, 'Only the silence that comes after.' Then she laughed once quietly, as if mocking death itself." At dawn, she was taken to the Chamber of Mirth. They bound her wrists, placed the mask over her mouth, and released the fumes. At first, she coughed, then she giggled, then she laughed. The inquisitors watched as her laughter grew louder, faster, uncontrollable. Her head snapped back, tears streaming down her face, the sound turning ragged and wild. They called it the voice of repentance. She laughed for 12 minutes before her heart stopped. The priests wrote that her soul had been purified through joy. The physician measured her pulse and called it proof of divine success. But when they removed the mask, her mouth was twisted open, locked in a grin her body could no longer sustain. Her eyes were wide, not in peace, but in horror. That night, one of the guards who carried her body out of the chamber went mad. He claimed he could still hear laughter echoing through the pipes, even when the room was empty. The next morning, he was found hanging by his belt, his face frozen in a smile. The priests called it coincidence. The people called it justice. The wind that passed through St. Mirel carried a strange sound that summoned not a scream, not a sigh, but a faint, trembling laugh. The Chamber of Mirth became the empire's favorite miracle. They said it turned sin into salvation. But what it really created was an orchestra of dying laughter and echoes that refused to fade. The Chamber of Mirth was not built for death, it was built for spectacle. Below the Cathedral of St. Mirel, a spiral stairway led into the earth, each step colder, quieter, farther from God. The walls glistened with condensation, carved smooth by centuries of rituals. At the bottom waited a single iron door, engraved with angels that smiled too wide. Behind it lay a room circular and perfect, its stone polished so that sound could never escape. In the center stood the chair. The chair was built of oak and restraint. Its arms were grooved where others had clawed for escape. Around it coiled pipes of brass and silver, the veins of the machine that kept the ritual alive. At the far wall stood an altar bearing a mask shaped like a smile porcelain on the outside, iron within. The priests said it was a gift from heaven. The workers who built it said it breathed like a living thing. Lady Amara was led down the stairs barefoot, her laughter already forbidden. The guards did not meet her eyes. In her hands she carried nothing, not even a prayer. When the iron door closed, the echo sealed her fate. They sat her in the chair, tightened the straps, and placed the mask over her mouth. Through the thin holes near her nose came the first hiss of vapor, sweet, floral, heavy. At first she coughed, then she smiled, then she laughed. It was small at first, a soft, nervous chuckle that made the priests nod approvingly. They turned the valve. The vapor thickened, her laughter grew, spilling out in waves that bounced off the walls and came back twice as loud. Soon it filled the room, an avalanche of mirth that drowned every other sound. Her body convulsed, her eyes watered. The Archbishop watched from behind a lattice, his face hidden in shadow. Every time she gasped for breath, he whispered a prayer. "Let joy cleanse her spirit." But the chamber was merciless. The gas robbed her lungs of air. Each laugh came shorter, sharper, higher pitched. Blood vessels burst in her eyes. Her body jerked violently against the restraints. The laughter kept going long after her voice had broken. It sounded like madness. It sounded like music. To the priests above, it was proof the ritual worked. When she finally went still, the chamber did not. The sound continued faint, lingering, as though the stones themselves remembered her voice. The priest overseeing the ritual called it residual joy. They bottled the air from the chamber and stored it in glass vials, believing it contained the essence of repentance. Weeks later, when those vials were opened for new punishments, something began to happen. The victims laughed before the fumes touched them. Some began giggling in their cells. One woman was heard laughing in her sleep until her heart gave out. The priests claimed the spirit of Amara had blessed the ritual. But those who worked below said otherwise. They said the laughter never left because it could not. They said the chamber was hungry. The records tell of one final experiment. The priests decided to test the power of the holy laughter on a group of nuns accused of whispering forbidden songs. 10 women were locked inside the chamber together. The door was sealed. For 3 days, nothing came out but sound. On the 4th day, silence. When the door was opened, the walls were streaked with blood and fingerprints. Some of the women had died laughing. Others had torn their throats apart to make it stop. The Archbishop called it a miracle. The chamber was sanctified, sealed with wax and silver. Years passed. The laughter faded into legend. But travelers who camped near the cathedral ruins swore that on windless nights, if you listened closely, at the old stone well that led to the crypt, you could still hear a woman's voice, soft, broken, laughing between gasps. Historians, centuries later, tried to explain it. They said it was hysteria, contamination, mass poisoning from the herbs. But their reports could never explain why every survivor of the cathedral claimed the same thing, that in their dreams they still heard it, that same laugh, echoing from a place that was supposed to be holy. The priests silenced her body but not her laughter. And as centuries passed, what began as a punishment became a memory, one that still laughs when the world forgets to listen. The cathedral of St. Mirel fell long ago. Its stones were scavenged for homes, its bells melted for war. Yet beneath the earth, the Chamber of Mirth remained untouched, unspoken, buried under layers of soil and shame. People built gardens above it, planted flowers that refused to bloom. And on certain nights, when the wind was still, they said you could hear something beneath the roots, a faint giggle, as if the ground itself remembered. Centuries passed. The empire that outlawed laughter became a republic that worshipped reason. The priests were forgotten, their doctrines reduced to dust. But memory has its own religion. In small villages, mothers still told their daughters, "Laugh softly, child. Joy invites eyes you cannot see." The words changed, but the warning endured. When historians finally uncovered the ruins in 1872, they expected relics of faith, chalices, icons, perhaps bones of saints. What they found was a door sealed in wax, carved with a smile that had never faded. Inside lay the chamber. The air was still thick, stale, tasting faintly of sweetness and rot. The chair remained, the straps stiff with age, the mask cracked but intact. And on the far wall, written faintly in soot, were words no one could explain. "Joy is a mirror. Look long enough, and you will see what stares back." The discovery made headlines. Newspapers called it the laughter crypt. Scholars debated whether it was a myth or an early experiment in psychology. The museum that acquired the artifacts displayed the porcelain mask under glass, labeling it Instrument of Hysterical Treatment, circa 15th century. Visitors leaned in close, intrigued, smiling nervously at its frozen grin. Then came the stories. Guards claimed the mask sometimes fogged from the inside, as if something breathed behind it. A curator swore she heard laughter echo in the storage vault after midnight. The museum dismissed it as superstition, but they began locking the exhibit room at night. Even in modern times, the idea of forced laughter survived. In prisons, in propaganda, in entertainment systems, still learned how to use joy as a weapon. The Chamber's theology evolved into psychology, its faith into formula. Keep them smiling, and they won't scream. Make them laugh, and they'll forget they're afraid. Lady Amara's name, once erased from history, re-emerged when a faded manuscript was found among the ruins of the old cathedral library, a personal letter, its ink smudged but legible. They cannot own what was born free. Even in the mask I laughed because it was mine, and when breath failed I gave my laughter to the air. Let it find those who cannot speak. Some called it forgery, others a miracle. But the words spread, printed on posters, whispered in protests, sung by women who refused silence. Her laughter became something else, no longer horror, but defiance. And so, centuries after her death, she became what the priests feared most, eternal. Today the Chamber of Mirth is gone. The site was sealed again, flooded to preserve what remained. Yet every year, on the anniversary of its discovery, a small crowd gathers outside the museum. They bring candles and flowers, and sometimes they laugh. Not mockingly, not cruelly, just softly, as if answering someone far below, because some echoes are not meant to haunt, they are meant to remind. Laughter was never the enemy. It was the last language left to those who had everything else taken. And somewhere, deep beneath the earth, where stone still remembers breath and bone, Lady Amara still laughs not in pain, but in victory.